Captain Marcus Vale stood before the vast viewport of the starship Harmony, watching the swirling nebula paint the darkness in shades of amber and gold. His reflection stared back, weathered features that spoke of countless missions, gray threading through his dark hair, and eyes that had seen too much conflict for one lifetime. At 42, Marcus had earned his reputation as one of Earth's most capable captains, but today's mission felt different. Today, he wasn't preparing for battle or rescue operations. Today, he was playing diplomat. Captain, Lieutenant Finn Torres called from the communications station, his young voice cutting through Marcus's contemplation. "We're receiving a transmission from the Valdorian vessel. They're requesting permission to board." Marcus straightened his dress uniform, the unfamiliar diplomatic insignia feeling heavy on his chest. "Grant permission, Lieutenant. Have the crew prepare for formal reception protocols." He paused, then added with a wry smile, "and remind everyone to keep their weapons holstered. We're supposed to be the peaceful ones today." The bridge erupted in quiet activity as his crew prepared for humanity's first official diplomatic contact with the Valdorians. Marcus had read every available report about these enigmatic beings, a humanoid species with crystalline skin that shifted colors with their emotions, advanced technology that seemed to blend science with artistry, and a society built around collective harmony rather than individual achievement. What the reports hadn't prepared him for was why they'd specifically requested to meet with Earth's military rather than the civilian diplomatic corps. 30 minutes later, Marcus stood in the main docking bay, flanked by his senior officers. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and the Valdorian delegation stepped aboard. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The woman leading the group moved with liquid grace, her skin a pale silver that seemed to glow with its own inner light. She was tall and elegant, with flowing hair that cascaded like starlight down her shoulders. Her features were sharp and angular, undeniably beautiful, but it was her eyes that captured Marcus's attention, deep violet orbs that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages and the wariness of someone who had seen betrayal too often. "Captain Vale," she said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that seemed almost musical. "I am Ambassador Zephyra Kane of the Valdorian Collective. Thank you for agreeing to these talks, though I confess some surprise at the venue." Marcus stepped forward, offering a respectful bow. "Ambassador Kane, welcome aboard the Harmony. I hope our facilities will prove adequate for our discussions." Zephyra's skin shifted to a subtle shade of blue, uncertainty, Marcus recalled from his briefings. "Your ship is impressive, Captain, but I must ask why the Earth Council chose to conduct these negotiations aboard a military vessel rather than a civilian transport or space station. Such a choice sends mixed messages about your intentions." "The Harmony is a multipurpose vessel, Ambassador," Marcus replied carefully. "While she does carry defensive capabilities, her primary mission is exploration and humanitarian aid. I assure you, we come with peaceful intentions." "Peaceful intentions," Zephyra repeated, her tone skeptical. Her skin darkened to a deeper blue. "Yet you greet us with weapons at your sides and armor plating on your walls. Is this how Earth defines diplomacy?" Marcus felt a flicker of irritation but kept his voice level. "Ambassador, with respect, the galaxy isn't always a peaceful place. We've learned that being prepared doesn't mean seeking conflict." "How convenient," Zephyra said, her violet eyes flashing. "Every aggressor in history has claimed they were merely prepared for defense. Tell me, Captain, how many worlds has Earth defended in the past decade? How many species have you liberated from their own governance?" The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to remain diplomatic. "Our interventions have been requested by the species involved, Ambassador. We don't impose our will on others. Don't you?" Zephyra moved closer, her presence commanding despite her smaller stature. "My people have extensive records, Captain. The Tauran incident 3 years ago, the Meridian crisis 2 years past, in each case, Earth's forces arrived with overwhelming military superiority and left with new allies conveniently aligned with human interests. Those situations required immediate action to prevent genocide," Marcus countered, his diplomatic facade beginning to crack. Would you have preferred we stood by and watched entire populations be slaughtered? I would have preferred that Earth worked through existing galactic councils rather than appointing itself the guardian of everyone else's morality. Zephyra's skin had shifted to an angry crimson, though her voice remained controlled. Your species has a troubling habit of viewing complex political situations in simple terms of good and evil, with yourselves always cast as the heroes. Marcus stepped closer, matching her intensity. And your species has a troubling habit of intellectualizing suffering while real people die waiting for your committees to reach consensus. Sometimes, Ambassador, action is more valuable than endless debate. For a moment, they stood facing each other, the tension crackling between them like electricity. Marcus found himself studying the play of emotions across Zephyra's crystalline features, the way her skin reflected her inner turmoil in shifting patterns of color. Despite his anger, he couldn't deny she was magnificent, fierce and intelligent and utterly unintimidated by his rank or reputation. Perhaps, Zephyrus said finally, her skin slowly returning to its silver-based tone, we should move this discussion to a more private setting. My delegation is tired from our journey, and I suspect your crew has better things to do than listen to us debate philosophy. Marcus nodded, stepping back and gesturing toward the corridor. Of course. I've had quarters prepared for your delegation, and we can begin formal negotiations tomorrow. Lieutenant Torres will show your people to their accommodations. As the Valdorian delegation followed Torres deeper into the ship, Zephyra lingered for a moment. Captain, she said quietly, her voice losing some of its formal edge, I hope you understand that my questions come from genuine concern, not hostility. My people have seen what happens when military powers declare themselves protectors of the weak. The results are rarely as noble as the intentions. Marcus met her gaze, seeing something vulnerable beneath her diplomatic armor. I understand, Ambassador. And I hope you'll come to understand that sometimes the choice isn't between perfect solutions and imperfect ones, it's between imperfect action and perfect inaction while people suffer. Zephyra studied him for a long moment, her violet eyes searching his face as if trying to read his soul. Perhaps, she said softly, we're not as different as I initially thought. Tomorrow's discussions should prove interesting. As she turned to follow her delegation, Marcus found himself watching the graceful sway of her movement, the way the ship's lights caught in her starlight hair. Whatever these negotiations brought, he had the distinct feeling that Ambassador Zephyra Kane was going to challenge him in ways he'd never experienced. The next morning found Marcus in the ship's conference room early, reviewing diplomatic protocols and trying to prepare for another round of verbal sparring with the enigmatic Valdorian ambassador. He'd barely slept, his mind replaying their initial encounter and trying to anticipate her next line of attack. When Zephyra entered the room, she seemed different somehow, less guarded, more curious. Her skin maintained its silver-based tone, but Marcus caught flickers of gold around her temples that his briefing suggested indicated intrigue or intellectual engagement. Good morning, Captain, she said, taking her seat across from him. I trust you slept well. Well enough, Marcus replied, noting that she'd chosen to sit directly across from him rather than at the far end of the table. I hope your quarters were comfortable. Very much so. Your ship is quite impressive, more sophisticated than our intelligence report suggested. She paused, then added with what might have been the ghost of a smile, I particularly enjoyed the observation deck. The view of the Andromeda spiral was breathtaking. Marcus felt a moment of unexpected warmth. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I often go there myself when I need to think about the burdens of command. Zephyra asked, her tone genuinely curious rather than challenging. Among other things, Marcus admitted. It's easy to lose perspective when you're dealing with tactical reports and political briefings all day. Sometimes you need to step back and remember what you're really fighting for. Zephyra's skin shifted to show streaks of soft blue, contemplation, Marcus realized. My people believe that perspective is everything, Captain. The same action can be heroic or villainous depending on one's point of view. That's why we prefer careful deliberation to hasty intervention. But what happens to the people who need help while you're deliberating? Marcus asked, leaning forward. Every moment spent in debate is another moment of suffering for those who can't wait for perfect solutions. And every hasty action creates new problems that might have been avoided with patience, Zephyr countered, but her tone was thoughtful rather than combative. Tell me, Captain, in all your interventions, have you never made a situation worse despite your good intentions? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow, memories rising unbidden of missions that had gone wrong, of consequences he'd never foreseen. Yes, he said quietly. More often than I'd like to admit. Zephyr's expression softened, her skin showing flecks of green, empathy, if he remembered correctly. I didn't ask to hurt you, Captain. I asked because understanding our failures is the first step toward doing better. Marcus looked up, meeting her violet gaze. What would you have us do, Ambassador? Stand by while others suffer because we might make mistakes? I would have you act with wisdom rather than just courage, Zephyr replied. Partner with others rather than acting alone. Seek understanding before seeking solutions. She paused, her skin showing more gold. Perhaps that's something our peoples could offer each other, your willingness to act combined with our commitment to understanding. For the first time since the negotiations began, Marcus felt a spark of genuine hope. Perhaps it is, Ambassador. Perhaps it is. 3 days into the negotiations, Marcus found himself looking forward to his daily verbal sparring matches with Ambassador Zephyr Kane more than he cared to admit. Their discussions had evolved from hostile confrontations to passionate debates, each challenging the other's worldview with increasing sophistication and, if he was being honest, growing mutual fascination. This morning found them in the ship's secondary conference room, a more intimate space with a curved viewport that offered a stunning view of the binary star system they were orbiting. Zephyr sat with her back to the starlight, which caught in her silver hair and made her skin seem to glow from within. She was reviewing data on her translucent tablet, occasionally glancing up at Marcus with those penetrating violet eyes that seemed to see straight through his diplomatic facade. Your proposal for joint patrol missions is intriguing, Captain, she said, her skin showing flecks of gold that indicated genuine interest, but I'm concerned about the power dynamics. Human vessels are significantly more heavily armed than ours. Wouldn't such partnerships essentially make Valdorian ships subordinate to Earth's military doctrine? Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering his response carefully. Over the past few days, he'd learned to appreciate Zephyr's analytical mind and her ability to spot potential problems he might have overlooked. What if we modified the proposal? Instead of joint patrols, we could establish response protocols where Valdorian diplomatic teams take the lead in first contact situations, with Earth vessels providing support only when requested. Zephyr's eyebrows rose slightly, surprise flickering across her crystalline features in waves of pale blue. You would accept a subordinate role for your military forces? In diplomatic situations, absolutely, Marcus replied without hesitation. My people excel at crisis response and tactical solutions, but your people understand the subtleties of interspecies relations far better than we do. It makes sense to play to each other's strengths. For a moment, Zephyr's skin showed the soft green of genuine appreciation. That's unexpectedly reasonable of you, Captain. Most military leaders I've encountered find it difficult to relinquish control, even when logic dictates otherwise. Maybe you've been talking to the wrong military leaders, Marcus said with a slight smile. Or maybe you bring out the reasonable side in people. The comment was meant lightly, but Zephyr's skin flushed with streaks of rose gold that Marcus had learned indicated pleasure or warmth. She looked down at her tablet, seemingly flustered by his compliment. Their moment was interrupted by Lieutenant Torres's voice over the intercom. Captain Vale to the bridge, Priority 1. Captain Vale to the bridge. Marcus frowned, already rising from his chair. I apologize, Ambassador. Duty calls. Of course, Zephyr said, but her skin had shifted to concerned yellow. I hope it's nothing serious. On the bridge, Marcus found his crew in controlled chaos. Torres met him at the command station, his young face tight with worry. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from a civilian transport, the merchant vessel Golden Wing. They've suffered a catastrophic engine failure and are drifting toward the gravity well of the larger star. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind automatically calculating trajectories and response times. The merchant ship had perhaps 4 hours before solar radiation would cook everyone aboard, and their own engines were insufficient to break free of the star's pull. "Time to intercept?" he asked tersely. 2 hours at maximum burn, sir. But their hull won't survive a standard tractor beam lock, the stress would tear them apart. We'd need to match their trajectory perfectly and somehow transfer their crew without destabilizing either vessel. Marcus rubbed his jaw, considering options. It was a complex rescue requiring precision and delicate maneuvering, exactly the kind of operation where one wrong move could kill everyone they were trying to save. "Captain," came Zephyr's voice from behind him. He turned to find her standing at the bridge entrance, flanked by her advisor, Nick Solara, a younger Valdorian with skin that shifted between blue and silver like ocean waves. "I couldn't help but overhear. Perhaps we can assist." "Ambassador, this is a dangerous operation," Marcus began, but Zephyr held up a hand. "Our ships use harmonic resonance technology for docking procedures," she said, moving closer to study the tactical display. "Instead of mechanical force, we match energy frequencies to create stable connections between vessels. It's specifically designed for fragile structures that can't withstand traditional methods." Marcus stared at her, hope flickering in his chest. "You're saying you could dock with the transport without damaging it?" "More than that," Nick spoke up, her skin showing excited yellow patterns. "We could establish a resonance link between all 3 ships, your vessel providing the power, ours providing the gentle guidance, and the transport safely secured between us." Marcus looked between the 2 Valdorians, seeing the sincere desire to help in their expressions. "Ambassador, if we're wrong about this, we could lose all 3 ships and everyone aboard them." Zephyr met his gaze steadily, her skin now showing the silver white of absolute determination. "Then we'd better not be wrong, Captain. Besides," she added with a slight smile, "didn't you once tell me that sometimes action is more valuable than endless debate?" Despite the gravity of the situation, Marcus felt his lips twitch in response to her subtle challenge. "Torres, open a channel to the Valdorian vessel." "Ambassador, I'm trusting you with a lot of lives here. And I'm trusting you to coordinate a rescue operation unlike anything either of our species has attempted before," Zephyr replied. "I'd say we're even." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of complex calculations, constant communication between the 3 vessels, and the kind of precise maneuvering that left everyone's nerves stretched to the breaking point. Marcus found himself working more closely with Zephyr than he ever had before, their different perspectives combining to solve problems neither could have handled alone. "Harmony, we're reading harmonic instability in the transport's hull," Nix reported from the Valdorian ship. "The resonance frequency is fluctuating due to heat stress." Marcus studied his displays, watching the dangerous dance of 3 ships locked together by invisible energy fields while racing against stellar radiation. "Can you compensate?" "Not without risking cascade failure," Zephyr replied, her voice tense. "We need more precise control than our systems can provide at this distance." Marcus made a split-second decision. "Torres, prepare a shuttle." "Ambassador, I'm coming aboard your vessel. We need to coordinate this directly." "Captain, regulations clearly state," Torres began. "Regulations don't cover this situation, Lieutenant," Marcus cut him off. "Ambassador, can your people accept a human aboard during operations?" Zephyr's skin showed rapid flickers of multiple colors, surprise, concern, determination, and something else Marcus couldn't identify. "Yes, but the risk is worth it if we save those people," Marcus finished. "I'll be aboard in 10 minutes. The Valdorian ship was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Where human vessels were built for durability and function, the Valdorian craft seemed to flow like liquid music made solid. The corridors curved organically, surfaces gleamed with an inner light that responded to movement, and the very air seemed to hum with harmonic frequencies. Zephyr met him at the airlock, her skin now showing the deep gold of focused concentration mixed with streaks of concern. "This way, Captain. Our navigation center is different from what you're used to." She led him through corridors that seemed to bend space itself, until they emerged into a chamber that took his breath away. Instead of traditional displays and controls, the room was filled with floating holographic projections that showed the positions of all three ships in perfect three-dimensional detail. Nyx stood in the center, her hands moving through the light constructs like a conductor directing an orchestra. "The harmonic resonance is failing," Nyx reported without looking away from her work. "The transport's hull is beginning to buckle under the thermal stress." Marcus studied the holographic display, his tactical training automatically analyzing the situation. "What if we modify the approach? Instead of maintaining constant resonance, we pulse it, synchronize with the hull's natural stress patterns instead of fighting them." Zephyra moved to stand beside him, so close he could feel the subtle energy field that surrounded all Valdorians. "That's actually brilliant. Nyx, can you modulate the harmonic frequency to match Captain Vale's specifications?" "Already working on it," Nyx replied, her fingers dancing through light as she adjusted the resonance patterns. "But I'll need precise timing from your ship's engines, Captain. We're talking about microsecond coordination." Marcus opened his comm channel. "Torres, patch me through to engineering. I need Raven Cross on this channel now." "Cross here, Captain," came the crisp voice of his chief engineer. "What do you need?" "Raven, I need you to synchronize our engine output with Valdorian harmonic pulses. The timing has to be perfect, or we lose everyone." There was a brief pause. "Sir, our engines aren't designed for that kind of precision work. The power fluctuations alone could destabilize our warp core." Marcus looked at Zephyra, seeing his own desperation reflected in her violet eyes. Without thinking, he reached out and took her hand, the first physical contact they'd shared. Her skin was warm and seemed to tingle with barely contained energy. "Raven," he said, never breaking eye contact with Zephyra, "I need you to trust me on this. We can make it work." "Aye, Captain." Cross out. For the next hour, Marcus found himself working in perfect synchronization with Zephyra and her team. Their different approaches to problem-solving, his direct, tactical thinking combined with her subtle, intuitive understanding of energy patterns, created solutions neither could have reached alone. When human technology reached its limits, Valdorian innovation bridged the gap. When Valdorian subtlety wasn't enough, human determination pushed through. "Hull integrity is stabilizing," Nyx reported, relief evident in her voice. "The transport is responding to the harmonic guidance." "Excellent," Marcus said, then opened the channel to his ship. "Torres, begin synchronized withdrawal from the star's gravity well." Nice and easy. As the three ships slowly pulled away from the stellar radiation zone, Marcus became aware that he was still holding Zephyra's hand. She seemed to realize it at the same moment, her skin showing flickering patterns of rose gold and silver. But neither of them pulled away. "We did it," she said softly, her violet eyes bright with shared triumph. "We did," Marcus agreed, then added quietly, "I couldn't have done this without you, Zephyra." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the intimacy of it seemed to surprise them both. Her skin flushed with warm gold, and Marcus felt something shift between them, a connection that went beyond diplomatic necessity or professional respect. "Nor I without you, Marcus," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They were interrupted by cheers from both bridge crews as the transport ship's captain confirmed that all passengers and crew were safe. The immediate crisis was over, but as Marcus looked into Zephyra's eyes, he realized that something far more complex and potentially dangerous had just begun. Later that evening, Marcus found himself in the ship's observation lounge, staring out at the stars and trying to process the day's events. The rescue had been successful, all 73 souls aboard the transport were safe, but that wasn't what occupied his thoughts. "Having trouble sleeping too?" Zephyra's voice came from behind him, soft and slightly amused. Marcus turned to find her silhouetted in the doorway, her skin showing the soft silver blue of contentment mixed with something more complex. "Just thinking about today," he said. "About how well we worked together." Zephyra moved to stand beside him at the viewport, close enough that he could sense the subtle energy field around her. "It was remarkable, wasn't it? The way our different approaches complemented each other." "More than complemented," Marcus said thoughtfully. "It was like we were two parts of the same solution. Your people's precision and subtlety balanced with our directness and determination. Perhaps that's what the galaxy needs," Zephyra said quietly. "Not human dominance or Valdorian isolation, but genuine partnership. Balance." Marcus looked at her profile, noting the way the starlight caught in her crystalline skin and made her seem almost luminous. "Is that what we're building here, Zephyra? A partnership?" She turned to meet his gaze, and Marcus saw something vulnerable in her violet eyes. "I hope so, Marcus. More than I probably should." The admission hung between them, loaded with implications that went far beyond their official negotiations. Marcus felt his pulse quicken, aware that they were standing at the edge of something that could change everything, not just for them, but for both their peoples. "Zephyra," he began, then stopped, unsure how to voice what he was feeling. "I know," she said softly, her skin showing gentle waves of rose gold. "I feel it too. Whatever this is between us, it's becoming something neither of our governments anticipated." Marcus stepped closer, drawn by an attraction that seemed to operate on multiple levels, intellectual, emotional, and something deeper that he couldn't quite name. "And that scares you?" "Terrifies me," Zephyra admitted with a rueful smile. "But not enough to make me walk away." As they stood together in the starlight, Marcus realized that today's crisis had revealed something crucial: they were stronger together than either could be alone. The question now was whether the rest of the galaxy would see their growing connection as a bridge between worlds or a threat to the established order. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new negotiations, and new opportunities to either build on what they discovered or watch it crumble under the weight of political reality. But tonight, in the quiet intimacy of shared understanding, Marcus allowed himself to hope that some connections transcended politics, species, and the vast distances between stars. Hearts Across the Stars. Part 3, Stolen Moments. The days following the rescue mission brought a subtle but unmistakable shift in the dynamic between Marcus and Zephyra. Their formal negotiations continued during the day, but increasingly, they found excuses to spend time together in the quiet spaces of the ship, the observation deck during off hours, the gymnasium during evening training sessions, and the small botanical garden that served as the ship's meditation space. Marcus discovered that Zephyra was an early riser, often finding her in the observation lounge before dawn watch began, sipping a pale blue beverage from her homeworld while watching the stars whirl slowly past. This morning was no different, except that her usual serene expression was clouded with something that made her skin flicker between silver and troubled gray. "Couldn't sleep again?" he asked softly, not wanting to startle her. Zephyra looked up, and Marcus was struck again by how her violet eyes seemed to hold depths he could spend a lifetime exploring. "The dreams came back," she admitted, gesturing for him to join her on the curved bench that faced the viewport. "I thought they'd stopped, but—" Marcus settled beside her, close enough to offer comfort but respectful of her personal space. Over the past week, he'd learned to read the subtle language of her skin's color changes, and the persistent gray threading through her natural silver told him this was about more than simple insomnia. "The same dreams?" he asked gently. Zephyra nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup in absent patterns. "The burning cities. The ships falling from the sky like dying stars. The silence that came after." She paused, her skin darkening to slate gray. "My homeworld wasn't always peaceful, Marcus. We learned to value harmony because we nearly destroyed ourselves learning the cost of conflict." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. In all their debates about military intervention and diplomatic solutions, Zephyra had never mentioned her world's violent past. "How long ago?" 70 standard years. I was just a child, but old enough to remember the sounds of orbital bombardment, the way the sky burned for weeks afterward. Her voice was steady, but Marcus could see the pain in the tight set of her shoulders. 3 billion people died in what we call the final war. We swore afterward that we would never again solve our problems through violence. The weight of that revelation settled between them like a physical presence. Marcus began to understand the depth of Zephyra's convictions, the source of her people's almost pathological commitment to peaceful solutions. They weren't naive idealists, they were survivors who had paid the ultimate price for learning war's true cost. "That's why you're so afraid of Earth's military expansion," he said quietly. "You've seen where it leads." "Not afraid," Zephyra corrected, her skin shifting to defensive blue. "Concerned. When a species discovers they have the power to reshape the galaxy according to their will, it becomes increasingly difficult to resist using that power. Even with the best intentions." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. "What if I told you that I agree with you?" he said finally. Zephyra's skin flickered with surprised yellow. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've seen too many interventions that started with noble goals and ended with unintended consequences. Too many planets where our help created more problems than it solved." Marcus stared out at the stars, remembering missions that still haunted his sleep. "The difference is, I still believe that sometimes action is necessary, even when the outcome is uncertain. The alternative, standing by while others suffer, feels like a different kind of moral failure." "And so we return to our fundamental disagreement," Zephyra said, but her tone was thoughtful rather than argumentative. "You believe in the necessity of imperfect action, while I believe in the wisdom of patient understanding." "Maybe," Marcus said, then turned to meet her gaze. "Or maybe we're both partially right, and the real answer is finding the balance between them." Zephyra's skin showed the soft gold of genuine consideration. "You mean combining Earth's willingness to act with Valdorian commitment to understanding the consequences?" "Something like that." Marcus found himself leaning closer, drawn by the intensity of her focus and the way her crystalline skin seemed to glow in the starlight. "What if we created a new model? Joint operations where your people handle the diplomatic and cultural analysis while mine provide the tactical support. True partnership, not just cooperation. It would require unprecedented trust between our species," Zephyra said softly. "And between us personally. We would essentially be asking our governments to base interstellar policy on." She paused, her skin flushing with rose gold that Marcus now recognized as her response to attraction or deep emotion. "On what?" he prompted, though he suspected he knew the answer. "On whatever this is growing between us," she finished quietly. "On the hope that two people from different worlds can find common ground where entire civilizations have failed." Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Her skin was warm and seemed to pulse gently with contained energy. "Do you think we can, Zephyra? Find that common ground?" Instead of answering immediately, she intertwined their fingers, her skin brightening with warm gold. "Ask me again in a few days, Marcus. After you've seen more of who I really am, beyond the diplomatic protocols and formal negotiations." The opportunity came sooner than either expected. That afternoon, as they concluded another productive session of treaty discussions, Zephyra made an unexpected proposal. "Captain, I was wondering if you might be interested in a cultural exchange of sorts. My people believe that true understanding comes not just from words, but from shared experience. Would you be willing to join me for what we call harmony training?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the slight flush of embarrassment that colored her skin. "What exactly does that involve?" "Physical meditation through movement. Your people might call it martial arts, though our version focuses more on finding balance and flow than combat applications." Zephyra's skin showed flickering uncertainty. "It's considered quite intimate in our culture. Sharing harmony training usually indicates deep trust and connection." The implications weren't lost on Marcus. "And you're willing to share this with a representative of Earth's aggressive military?" Zephyra's violet eyes sparkled with what might have been mischief. "I'm willing to share it with Marcus Vale, the man who held my hand during a crisis and admitted that maybe both our peoples have something to learn. An hour later, Marcus found himself in the ship's gymnasium, wearing loose exercise clothing and feeling distinctly out of his element. Zephyra had changed from her formal diplomatic attire into flowing garments that seemed to shift and move with her body, the fabric catching the light in ways that were almost hypnotic. Valdorian harmony training is based on the principle that all energy seeks balance, she explained, moving to the center of the mat with liquid grace. Violence occurs when energy becomes blocked or misdirected. The goal is to find the natural flow and move with it rather than against it. She began with slow, flowing movements that reminded Marcus of dance more than combat. Her entire body seemed to move as one fluid unit, each gesture flowing seamlessly into the next. Her skin brightened to warm gold as she moved, as if the exercise itself brought her joy. "Now you try," she said, moving to stand behind him. "Don't think about technique or form. Just feel the movement and let your body respond naturally." Marcus attempted to copy her movements, immediately feeling clumsy and awkward compared to her effortless grace. Zephyra moved closer, her hands gently guiding his arms and shoulders into proper position. "You're fighting the flow," she said softly, her breath warm against his ear. "Humans always try to impose their will on everything, even on their own bodies. Try letting go of control." The sensation of her hands on his body was electric, and Marcus found it difficult to concentrate on anything beyond her presence. Her skin was warm through the thin fabric of her training clothes, and he could feel the subtle energy field that surrounded all Valdorians. "Like this?" he asked, attempting to soften his movements. "Better," Zephyra murmured, her hands sliding down his arms to guide his hand positions. "Feel how the energy wants to move, don't force it." They spent the next hour working through basic forms, Zephyra's patient instruction gradually helping Marcus find a rhythm he'd never experienced before. Instead of the rigid precision of military training, this was about adaptation and flow, about finding harmony between intention and action. As they moved together through increasingly complex sequences, Marcus became aware of how naturally they seemed to complement each other. Where his movements were strong and direct, hers were subtle and flowing. Where she provided grace and precision, he offered stability and power. It was like their earlier collaboration during the rescue, but more intimate, more personal. "You're a natural at this," Zephyra said as they completed a particularly challenging sequence, her skin bright with pleased gold. "Most humans struggle with the concept of yielding in order to overcome." "I had a good teacher," Marcus replied, finding himself closer to her than he'd intended. They were both breathing hard from the exercise, and he could see the rapid pulse at the base of her throat. "Marcus," she said softly, her skin flushing with deep rose gold, "I should tell you that harmony training is considered, well, it's something Valdorians typically only share with very close friends or, he prompted, though his heart was already racing with anticipation. "Or with those they're considering as life partners," she finished quietly, her eyes never leaving his. The admission hung between them like a challenge, loaded with implications that went far beyond cultural exchange or diplomatic cooperation. Marcus felt the weight of the moment, understanding that whatever happened next would fundamentally change their relationship and possibly the future of both their peoples. "Zephyra," he said carefully, "are you telling me that you've been considering?" "I'm telling you that what I feel for you goes beyond professional respect or intellectual attraction," she interrupted, her skin now showing waves of brilliant gold mixed with nervous silver. "I'm telling you that every moment we spend together makes it harder to maintain professional distance. And I'm telling you that it terrifies me because I don't know what it means for either of us." Marcus reached out slowly, cupping her face in his hands. Her skin was incredibly soft, and he could feel the subtle vibrations of energy beneath the surface. "It means we're in uncharted territory," he said softly. "But maybe that's exactly where we need to be." When he kissed her, it was electric in ways he'd never experienced. Her skin seemed to glow brighter where they touched, and he could feel her energy field resonating with something deep inside him. She kissed him back with surprising passion, her arms winding around his neck as if she never wanted to let him go. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Zephyra's skin was a brilliant tapestry of gold and rose, her violet eyes bright with emotion. "This changes everything," she whispered against his lips. "I know," Marcus replied, brushing a strand of starlight hair from her face. "The question is, are we brave enough to see where it leads?" Their answer came in the form of another kiss, deeper and more urgent than the first. As they held each other in the quiet of the gymnasium, both understood that they had crossed a line from which there might be no return. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, political complications, and the weight of two civilizations' expectations. But tonight, in the safety of each other's arms, they allowed themselves to believe that love might indeed be stronger than the forces trying to keep them apart. Later that evening, they found themselves back in the observation lounge, this time sitting close together on the curved bench, Zephyra's head resting on Marcus's shoulder as they watched the stars. The easy intimacy between them felt both natural and revolutionary, two beings from different worlds finding perfect harmony in each other's presence. "Tell me about your dreams," Marcus said softly, his fingers threading through her luminous hair. "Not the nightmares, but the good ones. What do you hope for?" Zephyra was quiet for a long moment, her skin showing gentle waves of contentment mixed with deeper gold. "I dream of a galaxy where different species don't just coexist, but truly complement each other. Where diversity is seen as strength rather than a source of conflict." She paused, then added quietly, "I dream of a future where what we found together isn't seen as betrayal by either of our peoples, but as proof that understanding transcends species boundaries." Marcus pressed a gentle kiss to the top of her head, breathing in her subtle scent that reminded him of starflowers and ozone. "And if they do see it as betrayal? If choosing this means losing everything else?" Zephyra lifted her head to meet his gaze, her violet eyes serious but unafraid. "Then we'll face that together. Because some things are worth any price, Marcus. And what we have, what we're building. I think it might be one of those things." As they sat together in the starlight, both understood that their love story was becoming larger than themselves. They were no longer just a human captain and a Valdorian ambassador falling in love, they were the living symbol of what their peoples could become together. The weight of that responsibility was daunting, but as Marcus looked into Zephyra's eyes and saw his own determination reflected there, he knew they would face whatever came next as one. The stars bore witness to their silent vow, and somewhere in the vast darkness between worlds, the future hung in perfect, trembling balance. The end. Hearts Across the Stars, a complete romantic science fiction story exploring how love can bridge the gap between different worlds, cultures, and ways of understanding the universe. Through Marcus and Zephyra's journey from antagonists to partners to lovers, we see that the greatest discoveries often come not from conquering the unknown, but from opening our hearts to it.